Hey everyone, Jack here again with part 2 of our ropes and rigging. If you haven't watched part 1 where we prepare this line we're using today, I highly recommend you go and start with that part. What we're going to be doing today is looking at how we can stretch out the rope, set our depth markings so we have a nice consistent depth range the whole way down our line. It's pretty simple and very straightforward to do. There's just a few key points that we need to look at to make sure our line stays consistent the whole way across. What we're going to be needing today: decent pair of scissors to cut through our tape, also so we don't end up with any ratty ends on our tape. Measuring tape, it's going to be, this one is 8 meters long, but some sort of measuring tape that's about 5 meters. If you don't have something as long, you can just measure it out with a shorter tape. That's perfectly okay. As long as you get a nice 5 meter long length, that's perfectly fine. You're also going to need a roll of electrical tape. If you're making a line that's deeper than 50 meters, you are going to need 2 different types of color of tape. More on that a bit later, but if you have just single colour and you're doing anything under 50, this is perfectly okay. You're also going to need permanent marker. I'm just using a simple Sharpie. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. It's just going to be for marking our line as we go along. And also, I'm going to be using the rope I prepared yesterday. I've got most of the things set up already, so I'm going to take you through a bit of a walkthrough on how to set it up, and then we'll get straight to it. Okay, let's do it. So, let's get started with the setup. So we have my rope that I made yesterday in part 1. And what I've done is I've just wrapped it around the post here and used a little carabiner from my bottom weight to hold it in place. Now what I've done just before is I've measured it out, stretched it out, and marked with the tape where my 0 point is going to be. Alright, that's just going to be very important once we start moving down the line to make sure we have a fixed point for our 0. Then what I've done is I've laid out a tape measure. Just measured out along the deck here, up to 5 meters, then placed another tape marker right there. Okay, this is so our tape measurements can be consistently 5 meters the whole way. Okay, it's very important just to make sure when you're pulling your line out that if it stretches, it's going to stretch back out to these tape markers every single time. Okay, so we're going to cover that a bit more when it comes to measuring past the 0 point, but for now, let's just get into the stretching and marking. Alright, so now that we have set our anchor point on the rope, it's nice and secured to the post down there. We have our 0 meter mark on the tape on the deck, and we also have our 5 meter mark set right next to me here. What we're going to do is we're going to start pulling the line out, getting it to tension, and then making our marks along the line. Every rope is a little bit different, so you might find other ropes might have a bit more of a stretch to them. Things like climbing ropes where they're a bit more elastic and stretch quite a long way, so just be mindful of that when you're doing your stretching, depending on which rope you're going to use. This one's okay, it doesn't stretch too much, it doesn't take much effort to pull it out to its maximum distance, so I'm actually kind of lucky using this one here. If you have a bit more of an elastic rope, you can use different methods to make the rope stretch a little bit more. But because this rope is okay, and I'm also going to be using it for teaching, not really breaking any records on it, a couple of centimeters here and there isn't going to be the end of the world. So what I'm going to do to get started, I'm just going to make sure I have all my equipment ready. So I have my scissors, my duct tape, and I also have my little magic marker sitting with me right here. Very important to keep this close by, as you'll soon see. So to measure the rope, get a nice firm grip on it, and then what's going to happen is we're just going to pull it out, get some nice tension onto the rope. Once you feel that you've pulled it as far as you can and there's no more stretch in the line, I'm just going to make a little mark just at the start of my 5 meter tape. Okay, then I'm going to let it off. You see it stretches back quite a far way away from the tape. This is why it's important to make sure we pull quite a bit out of it, because that added up over 5, 6, 7, 8 marks can mean almost an extra few meters into the line. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my little marker point right here and we're going to make our first mark. Alright, this will be our 5 meter mark. I'm just going to move the tape up over the top of our little mark right there, then over we go. Now when you're doing your tape, what you want to be doing is getting a nice even pull over the top. Try to make it nice and clean so it's not overlapping over itself too much. You want to make sure it's a nice even mark. Pull it over. 3 to 4 times is perfectly fine. Too much, it makes a bit of a knob on the rope. Too little, you end up having to replace it very often. Okay? So So that's our first mark, 5 meters. Alright, a good guide to remember is every 5 meters along the line will equal 1 mark like this. Now when we get into 10s, 20s and 30s, that's where our markings might get a bit different. Okay, so what's going to happen now? We have to go set this 5 meter mark down onto the post over there. So let's go do that. Okay, so now that we're back down at the other end, I've disconnected the main anchor point from our starting point, and what I've done is I've dragged our new 5 meter marker down to this end here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it off to the post here, and making sure that our 5 meter mark is just before the start of our red tape here. Okay, so to test it, we're going to make sure we tie it up first, then we're going to see how much it actually stretches off that post to make sure it stretches out to this line here. So what we're going to do, make ourselves a little loop here, pass it behind, just have a little play around with the rope, getting the right distance, then we're just going to pass it over the top, and then underneath itself, just so it's nice and secure, however the knot can still slide into place. Okay, now if you look at that, I'm pretty close. If I pull for a bit of tension, pretty much on the money. A little bit extra pull, and we're right there where we need to be. So when we're on the stretch for tension, that's about right. It might take a few goes of just adjusting your knots a little bit and just giving a pull, really nice firm pull just to see where it stretches to and where the knot holds. But it takes a few times to get it ready, but once you get it ready, it's not going to move anywhere. Okay, so let's go back up to the other end, and we're going to start stretching out, and we'll just keep adding more and more marks to the line using this method. Let's do it. So I've just fast forwarded through our 10 meter and our 15 meter markers because they're very much the same as our 5 meter. We only use one strip of tape for marking those sections. It's only counting to 3 at that point, and every 5 meter mark is going to be a single anyway. Once we get to our 20 meter, however, that's where we're going to start making our first double mark. Okay, so just like the other ones, we pull our rope out to tension, make our little marker just in front of the tape, simple as, and then we're just going to make our electrical tape marks again. So find our little permanent marker point, start our tape there, so that's our first marker. And what we're going to do next, we'll move our second tape just to the side of it. Just a single band, just like the first one. We'll wrap those around. Ease it up. Okay, so just like that, that is our 20 meter marker. Okay, so just from this point onwards, single tape for 25, 3 tapes for 30, single tape for 35, 4 tapes for 40, single tape for 45, and then when you get to 50, that would be where you change your color. So when you get to 50 meters on this rope, I would probably use a piece of yellow tape, or I'd use a black tape. Okay, so very simple to work out, easy system to follow, and just have fun measuring out your lines. If you have any questions about how to measure longer ropes or more elastic ropes, just leave me a message and I'll get back to you on some different methods to use it. Some of these require a bit more extra space. You might need to go outside to a car park or somewhere where you can get up to 70, 80 to 100 meters of extra room to stretch out a line. But if you have a question about that, just send me a message or leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can possibly can. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up for rope stretching. Part 3, what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, is going to be our ropes and rigging, looking at knots that we can do to set up our float, things to help it stay nice and secure, and just some easy to remember knots while you're out in the water. Okay, so that's enough for today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.